Hello, Drainido here. Have you ever wondered what x86 emulation or virtualization looks like on the new Apple Silicone Macs? Are you a developer who uses Docker and remote containers in Visual Studio Code and wonder how life looks on the new M1? If so, stay tuned and let's get started. So, why this video? There are plenty of videos out there showing you how to install Parallels and Windows for ARM on the new M1 Macs, but that's about it. My goal is to briefly talk about x86 emulation, also known as Rosetta 2, and what it does and does not do for the new Macs, and then talk virtualization. But wait, there's two types of virtualization. If you're a developer who runs Docker and remote containers in VS Code, this one is for you. Lastly, yes, we can run Windows for ARM on Mac, but do we really want to? So, x86 emulation, also known as Rosetta 2, what is it and what does it do for us? First, a history lesson. If you're all as old as me, you may remember when Apple moved from PowerPC to Intel back in 2006. At a high level, Apple created an emulator called Rosetta that was a translation process that allowed apps with PowerPC instructions to run on the new Intel x86 Macs. This allowed for developers time to work through any code issues and recompile their applications as universal apps. At the time, Apple still supported both PowerPC and Intel Macs, so a universal app meant that it was compiled to run natively on both PowerPC and Intel Macs. As time went on and the PowerPC Macs went into support, Rosetta was eventually phased out of macOS by 2011. Fast forward to today, Apple's created Rosetta 2, which emulates apps with Intel x86 instructions on the new ARM-based Apple Silicone Macs. Once again, this allows developers to work through code issues and recompile their applications as universal apps, which this time around means they will run natively on Intel x86 and Apple Silicone ARM Macs. A small tangent, if you go into System Information and see an app that says Apple Silicone, this simply means that it will only run on the new Apple Silicone Macs. Now that we know how cool Rosetta 2 is, let's talk about what Rosetta 2 doesn't do. Rosetta will not translate kernel extensions or virtual machine apps that virtualize x86 operating systems. What does that mean? Well, it simply means you're not going to install Parallels or VMware Fusion and run commercially available Windows 10 with all of your favorite Windows apps that have been around for the past century. I'll cover this a little more later, but Windows for ARM does have its own x86 emulator with no fancy name to do this for you. On to virtualization. The first form of virtualization I want to talk about is containers running inside of Docker. As of this video, Docker is into the release candidate phase of Apple Silicone support for Docker for desktop. While Docker can emulate x86 for Docker images that do not have ARM built yet, it is not recommended as it is unstable. I use Docker for my development environments and integrate it with Visual Studio Code and the Remote Containers extension. Instead of showing you a simple Hello World app, here is one of my production apps. This container environment is a custom Ubuntu image I built with Docker Compose that is running Node.js, Google Cloud SDK, and a few other small applications. I wanted to run this for you instead of a typical Hello World app to show you that Docker, Visual Studio Code, and Remote Containers functions just fine for an actual production app. Honestly, I didn't even test this before recording. This is my first attempt at building and running it on the M1 Mac. If you are interested in a deeper dive on Visual Studio Code setup with remote containers, please let me know in the comments. I love this feature and would be happy to share how I set it up. On to the second form of virtualization, and that is running Windows inside of Parallels virtual machine. Personally, I'm a licensed user of VMware Fusion on my Intel Mac. However, Parallels was first to bring x86 and Windows virtualization to the Intel Macs, and once again, they are first with the release of virtualization on Apple Silicone. So respect where respect is due. First, let's talk through some of the hurdles. Microsoft does not have a commercially available version of Windows ARM that they will sell direct to us consumers. So the version that is publicly available is a Windows Insider Edition that is for beta testing. Now, because it's a Windows Insider Edition, this leads me to speculate and believe that Microsoft will make Windows commercially available direct to consumers, but as of this video, they have made no public comment indicating as such. Next, Windows ARM will face the same issues we have with macOS on Apple Silicone, and that is x86 emulation. However, as time goes by, this will become less of an issue. Personally, I do not have a need to run Windows 10 on my Mac in the capacity that I am using it in. However, I went ahead and went through the process of installing Parallels in Windows 10 for ARM. I will share links below in the description for anything important. First, I had to sign up for a Parallels account in order to download the technical preview, and then I had to sign up for a Windows Insider account, which I'm already a member of, to download the Windows 10 ARM image. Let's get started. In the interest of time, I do have this clip set to double time. So, after I downloaded everything, I start with installing Parallels. After installation is complete, it prompts me for permissions to access folders, then gives a little splash screen about virtualization on the M1, and then it detects that I have a Windows 10 image in my downloads folder. It then starts the virtual machine wizard and starts by asking me how I'll use Windows, either productivity or gaming. I go with productivity. It then asks me where I want to save the virtual machine, creates the virtual machine, and finally it starts installing Windows. Ironically, Parallels doesn't ask for an activation key until after Windows is done installing, to which I put in the technical preview activation key, and we're done. Through the power of editing, I did take out the part where I installed Microsoft Edge based on Chromium. So here I go and download Secure CRT from VMDOC's website and install it, since I know it is an x64 app that will require emulation. Secure CRT installs fine, but the start menu and search bar stopped working, so I had to force it to reboot. after the reboot, I am able to launch Secure CRT. That, however, is the extent of the testing I did. Because I do not have a need to run Windows 10 at this point, I went ahead and removed Parallels in the Windows 10 virtual machine from my Mac. Would I use Parallels in Windows 10 on Apple Silicone for production work needs? No, not at this time. Until Microsoft decides whether or not it will allow consumers to buy Windows 10 for ARM and Parallels or VMware can officially support running it virtually, I would not recommend doing this, and I would recommend sticking with your existing Intel Mac. Also, I just can't seem to shake my loyalty to VMware Fusion. That is all for today's video. I hope you found it useful. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and I'm going to ask, please like this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.